a tasting setup, or I did a tasting like live on it or whatever. And I had them tasting it and everything, and they're all like, "Whoa, Jesus!" You hear him spitting and coughing and hacking and everything like that. Oh, he's all over the place, man. So,
I'm sure people on the other end really enjoyed to hear that.
My PR guy was asking about it. I said, man, we only did like a quarter ounce of each. He's like, It was only 4 samples. So it was just an ounce. I was like, he goes, it kind of sounded like y'all were drinking at the bar there for a second on there. I was like, no. I was like, believe me, we weren't, man. It was a small.
It's not like that at all.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, big news shaping up in bourbon this week. Lots of rumors are finally coming to light in regards of Old Granddad 114 as well as Booker's. If you're out of the loop, make sure to catch the next community roundtable where we're going to be taking this into a much deeper discussion. Next week, I'll be doing a drawing for our Patreon winners for the month of November. If you aren't a Patreon sponsor yet, I would really encourage you to do so. It's a way for you to help support the show and keep it going. But at the same time, we're going to send you some awesome stuff in return, like koozies, bourbon samples, and being part of these monthly drawings. It's like a mix of NPR-sponsored radio, but with the benefits of a Kickstarter campaign. Visit patreon.com to learn more. That's patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit. Now let's go ahead and enjoy this week's episode.
Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof. And the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com. And you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long. Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixirs Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com.
Play Whiskey Wednesday, Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select $2 at checkout. And if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Welcome back to the episode of the Bourbon Pursuit Podcast. Just Kenny here today, flying solo. Ryan can't make it, but I'm back at a place where we had recorded a previous episode, number 23 with Carol Perry, and I'm excited today because I get to actually reconnect with an old high school friend of mine, Trinity Rocks 2002 over here. And, you know, it's funny that now we've gone years, almost, it seemed years after college and high school not talking, and then maybe the past 3 years, we've seen each other at more bourbon events than we ever even realized. But
whiskey has a way of doing that to people. So,
how weird, right? So today, excited to bring on the show, we've got Kevin Didio. Kevin, kind of give people one idea what it is you do here at the Bulleit Frontier Experience.
Sure, Kenny. My title is the manager of Kentucky Visitor Experiences here at Stitzel-Weller. So 3 tiers to my role. Number one, I manage the tourism experience. So we have and basically it's an hour-long tour that we offer that talks a little bit about history, the history of Stitzel-Weller, the history of Bulleit, and kind of the story behind each brand. We also feature a few other smaller brands, but it's really bourbon education is what we do here. The other side of it is I manage the production on a small micro distillery. Do about a barrel a week. We do experimentation over there with some different mash bills. We also get to develop some of our own distillation talent as well. So it's kind of some fun stuff. And then I also do a little bit of the Kentucky field marketing as well. So special events, tasting events, and other outside the site education opportunities.
Well, awesome. I want to touch on a lot of that a little bit later. But before we dive into it, let's kind of talk about your history before bourbon, right? Kind of talk about, I kind of said we went to high school together, but kind of talk about what you did after that and kind of what led you into what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, after Trinity, I went to Western Kentucky where I studied recreation administration, basically sports administration. I wanted to go. My goal in life was to be an athletic director or a football coach. While I was in school, though, I got a part-time job at a retail liquor store. Really enjoyed the industry. By the time I left, I was managing nights at the store. So I left college, and I was kind of exploring different ways to get back involved. Actually coached a little football at Trinity High School for a year. But then found myself a job as a bourbon specialist with a distillery in central Kentucky. So it's and then kind of fell in love with the industry there. It's actually Maker's Mark Distillery in Loretto. So I was a tour guide and basically a bourbon educator there. So worked with the general public, worked with distributors, really kind of teaching them the ins and outs of the brand. And I fell in love with the entire category of bourbon during that time. I had some great mentors there, and I also learned a lot about the heritage, the history, and then just some of the different characters and legends in the industry as well. So since then, I actually left that role. I stepped outside the industry for about 18 months. Of that 18 months, I think 12 of those months I was trying to get back in. And then I actually was welcomed back at Maker's Mark as the brand ambassador for Kentucky, or Kentucky Diplomat as they called it. So that really worked a lot with distributors, a lot with bartenders in the field, kind of find ways to help teach people about Maker's Mark, basically taking my show from the distillery on the road out into the field. Got my MBA in the meantime, while I was doing that role at Bellarmine. So I graduated in 2011 with that. After that, I stepped outside the marketing world and the sales world and went into the manufacturing world at Jim Beam, where I was a bottling line supervisor, and then stepped into a business analyst role. So kind of really got to learn the nuts and bolts of the industry doing that. So worked across bottling, worked across warehousing, had a lot of fun. So some people would say I have trouble holding down a job since I've done sales, marketing, bottling, finance, accounting, logistics. But it's been a really fun journey, kind of learning all the different sides of the industry. And I've met some great relationships, and very similar to you just mentioned. Whiskey kind of brings people together, kind of like you mentioned at the beginning of the show. It's really done that for me as well. I've made some great relationships, and I'm even in a better place now with Diageo and Bulleit Bourbon, kind of leading this tourism experience here. Plus, this role gives me a little touch on everything. I get the consumer side of things, I get a little bit of the sales side of things, and I get my production or manufacturing fix with our micro distillery. So
kind of let's rewind a little bit to when you were working inside of the liquor store when you were inside of college. I guess what was it that asphyxiated you with inside of just the liquor industry or just the spirits industry in general? I mean, besides being in college and wanting to drink a whole lot and saying because everybody, you hang around with a bunch of guys and we're always like, we should open a bar.
Absolutely. Everybody's going to open a bar or a liquor store when they're in college. That's the plan, right? I think that the cool thing for me was I saw how close-knit the industry was. Granted, this was Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we were a very small store. But I saw the kind of the connection that the store owners had with the distributors, and the consumers come in, and kind of it was just a community that you kind of saw around it. Consumers were connected to brands. Brands had unique stories. Distributors had great relationships with the field. I was an assistant manager, and they had great relationships with my owner, and it was just a real kind of family atmosphere that I saw in the spirits industry. And I know since you've probably started this podcast, you've kind of probably seen how close knit a lot of the industry is.
It's amazing how they'll just say, yeah, oh, I've got all their phone numbers right here on my.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these old timers, they can barely use the iPhone, but they've got all their numbers on there.
That's like, Tom Bulleit for a great example. He's got that type of relationship where he talks to executives and he also talks to store owners and bartenders. And so those, the relationships are widespread, and it feels like everyone is just, everyone's in a great place. Everyone's, kind of working towards a common goal of raising the category. And I saw that early on. And then as you see that kind of in all the different roles that I've had, there's just great heritage, great people, and just a really fun industry to be in. Like I said, I left for 18 months and spent 12 trying to get back in. So,
right.
Yeah.
So kind of talk a little bit more about the time at Jim Beam doing the bottling thing, because it seems that the one thing that we realize when we talk to a lot of the master distillers, they say, we've done every job here. And it sounds like you're already kind of like making your rounds of doing that. So kind of talk about a little bit, because we haven't really talked to anybody about the bottling side of things. So talk about a little bit of the intricacies maybe of just the bottling process.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that go into that. I mean, there's a lot of folks think it goes from the barrel to the bottle. And there's nothing in between, but there's a lot in between. There's processing. There's making sure the proof's right. There's all those different things. There's packaging components, label components. Anytime you want a new label, you've got to work with the TTB, and it's a 90-day process. And then there's trying to get a certain number of cases out the door in a certain time frame. So at a core of it, it's production. Because where I came from, there was a lot of history and a lot of heritage, and you're telling these stories and all this type of things. And those things come into play too, especially in the manufacturing facilities. But at the end of the day, the customer wants the product, and it's our responsibility to get it out to them in full and on time. So it's a good way to describe it. It's exciting, it's fast paced, but it comes down to efficiencies and it comes down to time a lot of times.
And a lot of these times you've got to understand the automation that goes behind all that sort of stuff, because you'll see.
And there's a ton of people that go into making sure that the product goes, that the label looks right, that the glass is of high quality, that the machines are running to the most efficiency they can. So there's a ton of moving parts that go into actually producing a product. Caps, labels, bottles, shipping, getting it out. On all those different things. And, a lot of times people think barrel to the shelf, and then it kind of, there's a ton of people and a ton of,
there's a big gray area.
Yeah, exactly. A ton of industry involved right in the middle of it. And that was the amazing thing for me, because where I was out where I was promoting and I was telling stories of heritage and getting to know the people, it was even more beneficial for me to get inside the operation and kind of see the people behind getting the product out. And you have a whole new respect for the products that are on the shelf.
Good. So that's what I kind of want to bring it to what you're doing today. So we are here. We're at the historic and famed Stitzel-Weller Distillery. You hear that word. Some people's their ears perks up. Some people, they have no idea about it. So kind of give a little bit of education about Stitzel-Weller for a lot of people that are kind of newbies to this realm, that maybe they understand the significance of what this place really had in regards of just bourbon history.
Sure. Stitzel-Weller is one of the true cathedrals of the bourbon industry, is what we like to say. Dates back to 1935. It was the merger of two very powerful companies at the time in the industry. You had the W.L. Weller Wholesale Company, and you had the Stitzel Distilling Company. Quick story, the Stitzels were over off Story Avenue. The Weller Company was down on Main Street. Essentially, the Wellers were wholesalers. So, they would buy barrels and then sell them to other suppliers or dealers over there, kind of like a middleman. They were buying most of their spirits from the Stitzels. So Prohibition hits, both stayed afloat a little bit through some medicinal whiskey practices and so on from there. But when they knew Prohibition was going to be repealed, the companies decided to merge and build the first new distillery in Kentucky outside of Prohibition. So that was 1933. They broke ground here. Doors opened on Derby Day, 1935. And a lot of legends in the industry involved with it as well. So the president and chairman of the W.L. Weller Company at the time, who also became the president and chairman of the of Stitzel-Weller, was a guy named Julian Van Winkle. So you guys are familiar with like Pappy Van Winkle? Well,
never heard of it.
Well, Kenny, I know you. I listen to the podcast, Kenny. You love Pappy, man. I see your pictures. You're always in the Pappy fast, man. So I knew you'd get a kick out of this. So Pappy the man, Julian, this was his distillery that he opened. The flagship brand here forever was Old Fitzgerald. Other iconic brands that were housed here: Cabin Still, Rebel Yell, IW Harper, which is a brand we might talk about a little bit later, but something we've relaunched. I think any other ones. I already mentioned Cabin Still.
We can just look on your shelves over here. He's got some sitting on the shelves.
Yeah, so there was a lot of the brands that you're seeing being revitalized and that have never died and are still popular today, originated here at Stitzel. So
Good. And so talk a little bit about why do you think, maybe you can comment, why do you think people go crazy over Stitzel, right? I mean, it had a lot of bourbon heritage and, I will lead into Blade and Bow in a little bit because it even has the word Stitzel-Weller on there. But why do you think that people have this sort of this marketing kind of pull into that category, that name?
I almost want to say it's almost like the place that time forgot, or something like that, is because you've got the giants of the industry that helped build it. So the Van Winkle family has a tie in here, and we all know the lore around the Pappy Van Winkle products that are out. The other side of it is like iconic brands have started here. Old Fitz, for example. One thing I've learned too is that, especially through my time, my different stops that we've already mentioned throughout the way, is that when I mentioned to different people that I was coming to work at Stitzel, they're like, "Oh, I got my start there as a bottling line supervisor in 1988. I used to work in the distillery there in 1990." So the roots of the bourbon industry, I should say, this place has a lot of roots in the bourbon industry that where folks have gone other places. They've all have a touch, one way or the other, on Stitzel. The other side of it that's wild about it now is that it's been a total revitalization of the site here in the past 3 years. So we mentioned the 30s when it opened. Stitzel was booming in the 60s and the 70s, mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s. You started seeing a decline in brown spirit sales. The rise of the vodkas and the other clear spirits were very popular at that time. So Stitzel was one of the victims of that downfall. They actually closed the doors here at the distillery in 1992. So that might be a reason why people are kind of excited when they hear Stitzel, because if you find a Stitzel liquid that's original here, it's guaranteed to be from 1992 or before. So the other side of it is, so 1992, they closed the distillery and, basically this became a warehousing site. I was telling you before we started today, at one point in the late 90s, there was a handful of barrels being aged here. I think there was like 4 or 5 employees and there was 9 contract security guards guarding the place. So more people guarding it than were actually working here. But through the bourbon renaissance, which, things like, you've seen all these different bourbon things rise up. Well, Stitzel's one of the things that's kind of risen up as well through the bourbon boom, so to speak. So they started aging Bulleit here, mid 2000s, 2005, 2006. Tom Bulleit moved his office here around 2010, and then 2014. We opened our visitor experience, and we also have our Bulleit bottling line, which we opened in August of 2014 in the back. So all the orange label products are bottled here as well. So
okay, I was about to say, it's been
a real revitalization of the site. So with the momentum that you hear people talking about in the field about Stitzel, Stitzel's actually coming back to life itself.
So you've got some small batch distillation kind of happening. Not only maybe small batch, single barrel distillation, right? So you're
about
doing
a barrel a week.
About a barrel a week.
Yeah.
So kind of talk a little bit about that. So what makes it unique, or what's going into it? Is it just we haven't figured out a name for it yet?
Right now, it's a lot of experimentation. We're playing around with some different mash bills. For example, when we did our grand reopening 2 years ago, we did a historic wheated mash bill to pay homage to a lot of the different the historic wheated mash bills that were produced here in the early days. We've done some different experimentations with some different malts. We've done some other things like that, other things with some higher rye, so like a 100% rye type product that we're working with. Nothing that's probably going to go into bottling or anything right now. Just totally, it's a playground for us to learn a little bit. Our Shelbyville, we're getting ready to open our new distillery in Shelbyville. We've let our new operators have come out here and worked on our manual stills. Basically, is a good way to put it. There's no computers, no automation or anything in our micro distillery. So they come out there and they learn kind of the nuts and bolts of the processes over there. So, if I had to say what we're doing with it is, it's mainly innovation, talent development, and experimentation.
Right on.
Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point of sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon. If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription.
So the other part about this is you said this has been a place for aging for a while, right? And right now it's aging a lot of Bulleit stock. Yeah. So I guess a good question is, I know the bash bills aren't going to be the same, but is there a certain chemical or balance or location here that people are going to be able to say like, oh, maybe one day Bulleit's going to be able to have the same kind of traits or characteristics that maybe Stitzel-Weller had at one point, just because they're in these rick houses of how it was aged at a certain point.
That's a great point, and I think that's something we have to just wait and see. We'll see what comes out of it, because I will say these are the historic style rick houses. 7 floors high, three tier ricks. So we'll see what comes out. Never know what we'll find. So,
right.
Yeah.
So and quickly talk about the bottling that you have going on here as well.
So, it's a high-speed bottling line. So all our Bulleit Orange Label product is bottled here at Stitzel-Weller. They brought that back, like I said, in October of 2014 when we relaunched that. Brought bottling back here first time since 1997. So we do that. We also bottle Blade & Bow and Hill Haven Lodge is another product we do here. But so the only thing we don't bottle here is the 50 mLs and the 200 mLs. Basically, it's a different shaped glass, so we don't.
Yeah, you got to have different tools. For
exactly.
All that.
Yeah. But all our Bulleit Orange Labels done here, and it's a high speed line. It's one of the it's got one of the most highly automated and technologically advanced lines I've seen. So
back on episode 58, we interviewed Tim Judge, and he was a global brand ambassador for Bulleit. And anybody that didn't get a chance to kind of check it out, give people the small rundown of Bulleit, a little bit of history and kind of what's going on.
Yeah. So Tom Bulleit is the founder. Tom's a local Louisville guy, Trinity High School, class of 1961. So he'd fit in at this table.
Perfect.
Man. So, but Tom was a lawyer in Lexington. And in 1987, he decided to launch his own whiskey brand. So he wasn't new. The idea wasn't new to him. I mean, he had a great grandfather, a guy named Augustus Bulleit, who was known to make whiskey on the Western Frontier of the U.S. And this was like the 1860s. So the Western Frontier of the U.S. then was Kentucky and Southern Indiana. So Tom had always kind of heard this little folklore and stories of his great grandfather, and always was curious about the industry. Throughout undergrad and throughout law school, he worked at some different distilleries in Frankfurt and Louisville, just doing odd jobs and temp labor, warehousing labor, all that kind of stuff. But he always had kind of a passion for it. But his number one passion was his law career. Finally, in 1987, after about 15 years of lawyering, if you want to call it that.
Lawyering.
I don't know if that's a word or not, but we'll go with that. He decided to hang it up and launch his family's bourbon recipe. Originally, the product was called Thoroughbred Bourbon, but after through some encouragement of his wife Betsy, they decided to go with the Bulleit name on the product. So it's he launched Bulleit in 1987 as a high rye bourbon, so 2/3 corn, 1/3 rye. And the brand really grew in kind of in the different coast. To be honest with you, it kind of got caught up in the kind of the bartender movements. So think of towns like San Francisco, New York. It's kind of amazing if you go out to those two towns, you see Bulleit everywhere. We're Kentucky guys here. You go around here, you don't see it quite often because there's a lot of different products here. But if you go to I'm seriously New York or San Fran, you see it on every shelf, and there's a lot of cocktail minis with it. So it really grew on the backs of the bartenders. And that's kind of a tribute to Tom, because Tom spent a lot of time working with individual bartenders, and bartenders they love the high rye content. They love the idea that they can make a cocktail with it. You can still taste the whiskey, and Bulleit's grown, exponentially ever since. Right now, we're on pace to be one of the top-selling bourbons in the U.S.
I mean, I will say that Bulleit Rye is one of my favorite ryes, only because it makes one of the best Manhattans that I enjoy. Mm-hmm. So the other thing that you really, I guess you can say, evangelize here is Blade & Bow. So talk about Blade & Bow a little bit more, because I don't think we ever had anybody really on to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, Blade & Bow really, it's only available in a handful of cities. it really pays homage to the history here at Stitzel-Weller. So Bulleit Bow, the name, we'll start with that. It kind of comes from the name of the keys. And that's one of the symbols that you'll see around Stitzel-Weller is this 5 key symbol. And it stands for the 5 things you have to do right to make great bourbon. Historically, the executives at Stitzel-Weller all wore like 5 keys, cufflinks, or tie tacks. And it was a reminder of this kind of vision or mission statement. What it was so the 5 things where you had to have great grains and yeast, and then you had to excel at fermentation, distillation, and aging. So if you did those 5 things right, you could make great bourbon. So every key has a blade, which goes into the door, and a bow, which is the end that you hold on your hand. So the name Blade and Bow comes from the skeleton key in that 5 keys symbol. So
now I get it.
Yeah, pays homage to a lot of the history here.
It's not a hunting reference.
No. I won't go there, but anyway. The other side of it is it's actually made with some of the last liquid that came off the still here in 1992. We use this rigorous, Solera method. Basically, it's a way to preserve historic liquid. It's a 5-tier barreling system. I could go into it, but it would really bore you guys to sleep. But it's what it does is when you get into tasting, it gives it this real kind of complex kind of mouthfeel to it. So it's kind of spicy on the front end and then kind of sweet on the finish. So it's a really amazing product. So it's got a great history and a great story behind it. So.
And the fact that you work for Diageo, and this is kind of like a little bit of an odd duck, right? Because you've got a whole mess of things here that you can talk about. You've got Bulleit, you've got Bulleit and Bow, you've got Orphan Barrel products, you got IW Harper. So kind of talk about which one of those kind of do you have the biggest fascination with and why? Because the one thing that you get to do when you come here is you can kind of see a lot of those brands. Maybe not taste them, but you can kind of see them on the shelf, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one. People ask me that question. What do you drink when you're not here? Is it Bulleit? Is it this? I said, so I'm a big fan of Bulleit 10 because I think it's got the spiciness of Bulleit, but it's a little more. It's almost like someone added bitters to your cocktail. It kind of the extra time in the wood kind of rounds the edges of it. I love that product. Bulleit and Bow is probably the one I'm most fascinated with. I think just because it has a unique story behind it. Plus, it pays homage to a lot of the history and the people that have worked here over the years. And then the Bulleit portfolio in general is pretty fascinating to me as well, especially Tom Bulleit's story, being a local guy, launching a product by himself, and basically turn it into one of the world's most, or one of the country's most fastest growing bourbons. It's, so you're right.
And he did it before the age of Shark Tank.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he launched it, 1987 too. And that wasn't the best time for bourbon either. So, so it's really, I think the cool thing about this role here is that, you're surrounded by a ton of unique things, everything from Tom Bulleit to the folks that work here, to the folks that used to work here, to guys like Carol Perry, who've been here 46 years. And then just the neighborhood itself has a lot of pride for this site as well. So it's pretty wild to be here.
So I want to also just touch on one thing, only because we've never really talked about it before, but that's you guys have IW Harper as part of your portfolio. So school us a little bit there about a little bit of the history of IW Harper.
Yeah, IW Harper is one of the more popular bourbon brands in the early 1900s. It was actually created by a guy named IW Bernheim. He decided he named it. He was going to name it after himself, but he thought Bernheim was too German of a name to put on his label, so he went with Harper, which was the Derby-winning jockey in 1911. The Derby-winning trainer in 1911. So he named the product after him. So it was IW Harper, and so it was, if you were drinking bourbon in the pre-Prohibition or you were drinking just after Prohibition, it was probably IW Harper. It was like I said, it was very popular. If you look back to like the original James Bond books, everybody sees Sean Connery drinking the martini. Well, if you read the original
Shake
books,
it, not stir.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you the original books, they were drinking IW Harper. They were drinking bourbon in those books. So very popular brand throughout the 60s and 70s. Mid 80s, with the rest of bourbon and dark spirits kind of took a downfall. But the product was always very popular in Japan. So in the early 90s, they pulled it off the shelf domestically and only made it available to the Japanese market. And it was probably 20 years it was only available over there. And we relaunched it back in the States we relaunched it back in the States in May of 2015 with 2 different ones. We have a non-age statement, and then we have a straight 15-year.
So I guess the one thing I don't know about it, and if you go around and you can look on old websites, you can find decanters for old things, but there's one thing that with IW Harper, it's a kind of a guy in a top hat.
Sure.
Do you know anything about the reasoning of why that was the kind of logo or the emblem that they chose as their kind of marketing engine behind it?
I think really it was kind of a regal type product. It was supposed to be a higher end, and that was, so the term anytime, anywhere, Mr. Harper or something like that. It was very palatable. It was mixable. You could drink it straight. It was a very versatile or approachable bourbon, and always has been. So,
a good deal. So I want to talk a little bit more about what you can experience here at the Bulleit Frontier experience. So one thing to kind of walk people through, what's a typical tour? What are some of the things that you would see when you do come here?
Yeah, the big thing we try to give everyone a little kind of a well-rounded bourbon experience when they're here. So we'll start with our tour. It usually starts with a little Stitzel-Weller history, kind of setting the stage of why this place is important, kind of like what I did with you earlier today. After that, we get into a little bit of production, talk a little science. My whiskey specialists here, they're kind of geeks. They love things like yeast, and they love things like fermentation, distillation, kind of the real science behind it. We'll talk maturation inside the warehouse. We'll talk a little bit about the history of Tom Bulleit, the history of the brands, kind of where Tom grew his market, where his ideas came from for his brand. And then we end each tour with about a 15-minute comprehensive tasting. So what our goal for that is, it's usually 4 samples. And what we look to do is give you kind of some tools to be able to help you evaluate bourbon. So we're not just going out there just kind of telling you what our products are and taste them if you want to. We really try to get into kind of giving you the confidence to go into, even if you're new to bourbon or you're an expert, if you're going out to a restaurant, if you're going to a package store and you want to take a look, we give you some tools to help evaluate the spirit, kind of say, what makes it unique? What do you look for when you taste things? Like what does the mouth feel? What is, how to properly nose a bourbon, how to inspect the legs on the glass, so on from there. So we try to give it's really about creating a well-rounded experience that highlights our brands that we have here, but also educates our consumer on the category in general. So the
year's wrapping up here. So how many visitors have you seen grow from like 2015 to 2016?
We increased probably 25. Well, let me take that back. We from 2015 through 2016. We're up probably about 32%. I think it was if I did the math right there. The exciting thing for us is that our first couple months it was a lot of local. Last year we started seeing Indiana, Tennessee. Here recently, you walk through the parking lot on a Saturday, you're starting to see Michigan, Ohio, Iowa. And these are the license plates that you're starting to see when you go out there. So personally, I think we're really kind of on the edge of the bourbon tourism thing, and it's just it's great for us. We're in a great neighborhood. We've got Angel's Envy that just opened down the street, Peerless, Evan Williams. So it's the Louisville bourbon experience is growing, and I think it's best. It's great for all of us in the area. So I would think next year we're probably looking to see anywhere from probably 40 to 50,000 people come through here. And I still think it's, we're in growth mode on the whole tourism side of things.
So in regards of 2017, what are you guys looking for to help maybe take care of that? Any kind of special, I guess, things that you have up your sleeve to be able to have new for 2017 for maybe that people were here a year or two ago or anything like that?
We're always looking to sample new products. That's kind of the easy one there. We've got a few things up our sleeves that I can't really share with you right now. But what I can tell you is we're looking for ways to get the consumer more in touch with the process, and what are some more interactive experiences that we can create for our consumers. Because what we're learning, Kenny, is that our consumers want more information. They don't just want the kind of the surface tour. They want to get their hands dirty. They want something they want smoke in their face. They want to get into the processes and get to know the people behind the process. So if we can figure out ways to do that, I think our consumers and our visitors will they'll continue to flock to us, and we can continue to entertain them. So
maybe a shrine of Carol Perry, like at the entrance or something like that.
He wants his name on that guard shack, he tells me. So I don't know if you guys have. No one's ever been out. You got first person you meet when you come out to Stitzel-Weller is Carol Perry. Carol's been here 46 years. He reminds me of that every day. He's a great guy, but he's a smiling face. He's got a ton of love and passion for Stitzel-Weller, number one, and then a ton of love and passion for Bulleit and all our brands here. So he's a great ambassador to Louisville, to Shively, and to Kentucky, and for Stitzel-Weller as well.
So with that, we're going to wrap it up. So if people want to get in contact with you, if they want to know how they can schedule tours, when can they come, kind of give a when are you open? How do they know about it?
So right now we are open Wednesday through Sunday. From 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. Our tours run on the hour, Wednesday through Friday, and on Saturday we go every 30 minutes. Sunday we go every 30 minutes as well. Best way to reach us, especially if you're planning on coming on a weekend, try to call us during the week and set up a reservation, because our weekends, and as Kenny, if you've been around at Bourbon Trail anytime soon, the weekends on the Bourbon Trail are wild. They're packed. It's an exciting time for us because we get a ton of people that are excited about bourbon come through. So please call, set up a reservation. Best number to reach us is 502-810-3800. Or jump on our website. You can see the information on there as well. It's bulletexperience.com. So
awesome.
That's the best way to do it. And, or just call us directly, set up a reservation. Happy to host you guys anytime. So,
yeah, make sure you shake Kevin's hand and he'll show you a good time. So Kevin, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was fantastic. Just to learn more about you, because I haven't really really talked about that since we've graduated.
Since
right?
Dennis Esterly's math class, man. It's been a while, hasn't it? Yeah. So, yeah.
But it was good to kind of know about that, to kind of, learning more about the history of what's happening here, some of the things that are going on, and some of the things we can expect for next year as well. So again, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, Kenny. Thank you. Anytime, my friend.
Awesome. So if you like what you hear, make sure you support the show on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit. Follow us on social media at Bourbon Pursuit, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you have any more show suggestions, people you'd like to see, any more comments, go ahead and send us an email. It's theduo, THEDUO @bourbonpursuit.com. And with that, we will see you all next week.